All right, this lesson is dedicated to for loops, while loops, lists, and that sort of stuff. So what we're talking about is iterating over things. We're also going to discuss enumerate, zip. So those are some of the things that will help you out while you're sort of doing some of these types of problems that need enumeration or need to cycle over things. And these are grouped together because a lot of times when you do a for loop or a while loop, you'll create a list in order to print that data off later on, or maybe you're cycling through a list in order to print the data off, or you're doing something with a list using some kind of for loop. Now my habits change in programming, but I will say over the last, I think I'm sort of in the habit of using enumerate now instead of range. So in the book, you'll see that they talk about the range function. The range function is really good, and you're going to need it. But if I'm gonna gonna link or loop over a list, I'm going to use enumerate. Enumerate gives you the index as well as the element, and we'll see an example of that later on. Okay, so let's start off with syntax. So how do I declare a list in Python? So A is equal to 1, 5, 7, 9, right? So that's a list, and that's how you do it. Let me turn on the grid line so I can stay within the grid, but A is equal to that. And then if I wanted to slice into the list, that simply means getting elements, either one element at a time or multiple elements. So for example, if I'm looking to get this 5 out of this list, I would, in Python, is a little different than many programming languages, but it's a zero index language, which means this would be the 0th element. That's the first element, the second, and the third. So you're probably going to hear me say, I'm probably going to say 0th, and that's what I mean. Really, what you're talking about is the first. So anytime that you remember back in math class or physics or whatever, they talk about x naught, x0. That's your initial point, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the first element. So if I want the 5, then I got to just do a1. If I want, and that's just a number. So this will come out as an integer in this case. If I'm slicing, in other words, I'm accessing more of that information. Suppose that I want the 0 through first element in that list, and then that would be, so this would be number 1, and this is number 2. I'm going to get all of those. So 1 is there, 2 is here. So I'm going to get A, and then what it is you're going to use the bracket again, but this time whichever one that you want to start off. So that I'm going to start off at 0, and it's a little weird here, and the reason why it's a little weird is because it's a 0 index language. So you don't actually go all the way out to 2. So 2, you would think that you'd put 2 here. So it's colon is how you separate the two numbers. So this is where I want to start. I want to start at the 0th, and I want to go all the way until 2. But the problem is this is it's that, like I said earlier, it's a 0 index language. So you actually have to put in a 3 here in order for it to stop at 2. So you put 3 in there, and that will give you another list, not an integer, not in this case when you're talking about A1, that integer 5 will come out. And when you have multiple pieces, then it'll be another list. So what will happen is you'll get another list of 1, 5, and 7. And that's what will come out of the, so what we're trying to do is get things out of the list, and that's how you do it. So that's the syntax, that's accessing, that's slicing. The methods are on the sheet that I've asked you to print out and put in your course guide, and we'll do a couple of these. You see append is the number 1, I think that's the number 1 method. When I say number 1 method, I mean the one that is used the most. But there's other methods here. If you do list, of a string A, B, C, then you'll get out a list that has the character A or the string B, and the string C. And we'll do an example of this later on. So next, I think the next lecture or the next video will do that. What else? Okay, list comprehension. So we're going to do some list comprehension. So what is list comprehension? List comprehension is simply a special compact syntax created because of how often we run through lists. It's nothing more than that. I mean, don't think that it's magical or anything else. It's just a simple sort of special compact way to produce a list. And so say, for example, I wanted to take this list A and I wanted to turn it into the list B. And instead of having integers here, I want to have strings. So let's just suppose that that's what I wanted to do. So what I would do is I'd say string of E, meaning like element, for element or E in A. All right, so it probably looks a little weird, but this is what is actually going to go. So this piece right here is what's going to go into the list itself. So it's going, and this is how you're accessing that information. So I'm going into A and I'm going to grab, just like this. If this were a for loop, it would grab the 1 and then would grab the 5 and then would grab the 7 and then would grab the 9. But then I'm just turning it into a string. So we'll see an example of that here in a second as well. But that's list comprehension. It's not difficult. It's just a compact way of doing things. And you can also add an if statement. I tell you what, let's do one with an if statement in there. So C. So we'll turn it into a string. Actually, let's do something different. Let's go E plus 5 for. Oh no, I got to put the if statement first. So it's actually an if then. I don't know how to do just an if yet. I haven't researched that one. So if, let's see if E is less than 8. If E is less than 8, then I want to do that. Else, I'm just going to return E. So in other words, you're adding 5. So I should be adding 5 to the 1. It should be adding 5 to the 5. It should be adding 5 to the 7. But the 9 better come back the way it was. And then for E in A. So hopefully we'll program this thing up and show what it does in Python here in a second. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about. Oh, there's these other things that aren't methods. So a method would be like list dot something, right? So it's the function. So some function, that's a method. And these are sort of special methods that go along with lists. These are things that you can do to a list. And you can see examples of them like right here, min of X. So if you had a list that had a bunch of numbers in it or a bunch of letters or something to that effect, it will go through and we'll do that. I don't know what would happen if you have it mixed, because you can actually have a list. So let's do another list. So D is equal to A, so a string A, 3, another list 1, 2, 3, and word. So this is another. I mean, this is very syntactically correct, because you can have a list that has string in it. It can have an integer. It can have. I mean, we could have made that a float if we wanted to. It can have another list in it, right? Because so the third, so 0, 1, 2, the second, so D2 would actually be a list, and then you could go D2, 2, and to get out the 3, right? So it's at 0, 1, 2. And then you could have another string in there as well. So it's a very flexible data structure. So this is the first data structure that, I guess, non-scalar data structure, especially if you consider a string and we haven't really considered strings yet. So we'll consider strings a little bit more, but they're basically, they're non-scalar as well, but they're immutable, which means you can't change them. But we'll talk about those in another class. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to Python. And so I'm going to grab this and move it to the side and put Python up in this corner. And it looks like I've already got some stuff identified. I don't know. I mean, we can say A is equal to, I'm going to just do the ones that I did over here, 1, 5, 7, 9, F9. And so you'll see what happens when you do that, right? So you get this thing and it's yellow now. I don't remember if you remember, but it was blue or pink when it was numbers. And now it's a list type of size 4. So if you did length len, len of A, you should get 4. If I want to access things out of it, so just a second ago we did A1 and we said it was going to be 5, if you remember. So it's right here is 5. If I did A, let's just make sure this does what I said it was going to do. F9, so 1, 5, and 7. Hopefully that's what I said. So 1, 5, and 7. Yep, it's a list. So that comes out there. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about. So the neat thing about Python is a little different than other programming languages is, if I want that 9 there, if I want the end of the list, and you're going to need to know to get the end of the list all the time. If I want the last number in the list, you can just do -1, or the last whatever in the list. It doesn't have to be a number; it could be whatever in the list. So so -1. If I wanted -1, if I wanted both of these two numbers, I could go A of -1, -2. -2, how about -2, -1? That is, so that's only a 7 because it stops at n minus 1. So maybe we make this a 0. Nope. So we want to go to -2, so that gets us a 7. And then I want to stop at -2. How about that? -2 to -2 doesn't work. It's this thing about the last number being -1. So I want to stop at, oh yeah, so you just don't put anything there if you want it to go all the way to the last number. Yeah. So I just remembered that. So it's kind of weird about this. If I wanted to start at -2 and go all the way to the end, then you just put colon and just let it ride. If I wanted to go from -3 to -2 or -1, let's see what happens there. So that's going to -3. So -1, -2, -3. So that's where it's going to start, and it's going to stop at -1 minus 1, which would be -2. Okay. So that's the sort of the syntax that goes along with there. Sometimes you got to play with that. I mean, yeah, I don't know all of because I don't only program in Python. Sometimes I program in R. Sometimes I program in C. Sometimes I program in Java. So I don't know. Sometimes I have to experiment with some of these things in order to get it right, and that's the case in this one. Okay, so let's do a list comprehension. So let's do that one. Let's say B is equal to list comprehension. So I want to string of E for E and A. F9. So see what that sucker does. So if I double click, so I don't know if I showed you guys this, but you can double click on the especially these kind, and you can see what's in there, right? So these are strings now. So 1 is a string, 5. So if you now get B0 plus B1, it's going to just put those two numbers together, right? So it's 1, 5 now instead of A0 plus A1. Should add them together. 6, right? So it's doing what we expected to do. And then there was another one. Oh, we wanted to add 5. So we wanted to put do a list comprehension with an if statement in there. So I can't remember that. It's not letting me scoot over, is it? All right, let's see. So that is the statement that I want. So it's E plus 5 if E is less than 8, else E for E in A. Okay, so this right here is the for loop, right? So all it's doing is it's grabbing each element in A. So it's going to grab the 1, the 5, the 7, the 9, and then if E is less than 8, then it should add 5 to each one of those. Let's find out what happens. And then print C. We could do the same thing. We could grab, let's see, we could grab this if we wanted to, but I don't know. Printing is the same thing. So let's print A and print C and just make sure that it makes sense. Print A. So I added 5, I added 5, I added 5, and I didn't. Okay, it looks like it's working how we suspect it should. So that's list comprehension. And the last thing, I think there's a last thing we wanted to do. Oh, no, that's it. Okay, hopefully you guys learned a little bit about slicing, about list comprehension. We will put all of this together in the last video before this class and actually do something real I think is relatively cool. Not really cool, but it's relatively cool. All right, have a good one.